Hey, everybody. Welcome to Beyond the Cart. I am your host, Kyle Hamer. And again, we have another amazing guest with us today on the show. And we have Rocco Baldassare, and he is a marketing legend, pro, been doing it a long time. And so, Rocco, welcome to the show, my friend. It was good to connect with you pre-show and kind of get a chance to chat a little bit. But welcome, glad you're here.
Thank you so much, Kyle. It's a pleasure being here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Awesome. Well, I'm pumped about this because all of the top talking points that we've kind of laid out to chat about today are really sort of near and dear to my heart in the Ecomm space specifically, and just in marketing. And so, but before we dive in, I'll just share with our listeners a little bit of your background, how you got started and really kind of what your focus is right now.
Thank you so much again, Kyle. So essentially, I started my journey in marketing about 20 years ago, with one goal in mind. I knew that marketing is the one department inside the firm that can really make the difference for marketing firms. When I started, I was back in Italy, and I moved here to the States after a couple of years working out of my home country. I moved here because this is the best country in the world to really test your marketing skills. And I've seen the whole evolution of marketing over the past 20 years, from manually optimizing everything in a campaign to really having this technology wave that essentially hit marketing a couple of years ago, that is changing completely in the landscape and transforming marketers from marketers to strategists. And I kind of have seen the transition into a marketer becoming almost like a C-level position for a client, trying to help them with operation and making sense of all the data. The job has really changed. Me personally, I started with small clients, transitioned to medium and large clients, and I started this adventure with Shirofune a couple of years ago because I saw this transition toward a more automated way of doing marketing and focusing on the strategy for the most. And yeah, it has been a wild adventure in the past 20 years, and hopefully will be a wilder adventure over the next 20. And I'm very much looking forward to covering our topics today.
Love it. I love it. That's awesome. So tell me a little bit more about Shirofune and like your platform.
So essentially, Kyle, when it comes to Shirofune, we are trying to do one simple thing. We are trying to save time for agencies and brands, taking that time and focusing on strategy. So all the manual tasks that people do, we fully automate. So I know that you're very big into Amazon, right, Kyle?
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things we didn't like about Amazon was the lack of opportunity of optimizing for first-time customers or lifetime customers. Mm-hmm. So we integrated with the AMC, we bring first-time customer, lifetime customer data into Amazon, and we do all the bidding and budgeting for the client. Now, this is going to free up time to think about new products, think of ways to structure your campaign, think of strategy. So essentially, the omnichannel approach we have is all meant to create efficiencies, increasing performance, but more importantly, saving time, because it's unbelievable that in 2025, we are seeing agencies spending hours on a client reporting that adds zero value to the customer. Zero. It needs to be automated because they're paying you to come up with great ideas, not to fill out an Excel table or a Word document.
Exactly.
And that's 100%. Why I'm excited to talk to you, because we are on the same wavelengths when it comes to this.
Yeah, 100%. I tell my team all the time, I was like, we're not paid to click buttons. We're paid to explain and tell people what buttons we should be pressing, not just randomly. It's like it's all about the strategy, right? We're there to tell the story and to provide the context, not just report the data. Data by itself without context is pretty meaningless, right? Unless your data can be tied to action and influencing action, it's just noise. It's just noise, man. And we need less noise within our marketing signals, not more noise.
Oh yeah, we have way too much noise right nowadays, right?
For sure. 100%. Awesome. Well, let's dive in. Like, one of the topics we wanted to cover was this one. So, how do digital platforms help e-commerce professionals? Unpack that a little bit. What do you mean? What's kind of your angle on that?
Well, digital platform is a very broad term, right?
Yeah, 100%.
I would like to narrow it down on the different types of digital platforms that are out there. Digital platform can be Google ads or can be Amazon ads,
Sure.
right? It's a digital platform. But when it comes to unpacking something that can help e-commerce, that goes into data analysis, essentially.
Yeah.
Data analysis leads to decision making. Decision making leads to good or bad decision. So the data analysis piece is very time consuming, but more importantly, data is so dynamic in today's world that by the time I do an analysis today, that analysis is outdated.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, we are chasing data all day. And by the time we make a decision, the decision is in the past already. So we are optimizing with past data. So digital platforms allow, in my humble opinion, Kyle, marketers to run at the same speed of data, where the differentiator is going to be how the marketer interprets its data or automates the layers of data optimization. A typical example could be done by thinking about, for example, in-store visits with Google. I do a Google example because in-store visits is a very funny one. It's delayed, the data is not up to date.
For sure.
But that data, many people believe is not as good as requesting directions. So I'm asking myself, if you do go to a store, you are requesting a direction. So technically you're double counting if you do request for direction. A request for directions doesn't place you in the store. So a marketer can make the call. What am I going to use? Request for directions where I get more, or in-store visits? But once you make that decision, you shouldn't be doing the optimization of budget and bids. Why? Because a machine can always do it better than you 10 times out of 10, because they can read the data the moment it comes in. So digital platform let you run, but you pick your shoes and you pick the energy drink you want. But the marketer puts the strategy. Digital platform really simplify the process of executing after the decision is made.
Yeah. So essentially, it's like, how do you gather all of the data you need, but then using a platform to help you sort of make faster decisions with it, right? And maybe the right decisions. Yeah, no, I love that. I think that's really important. One of the biggest aha moments for me when it comes to like any level of data was getting clear distinction on the difference. And this is kind of double tapping on what you had just mentioned, but the difference between lagging indicators and leading indicators, right? Because if you're constantly only looking at a lagging indicator, right, which is valuable and definitely has merit, but not looking at leading indicators that lead to the outcome that you want, right? Then you're not looking at the entire picture correctly. I mean, one way to look at it is, it's like maybe creatives, right? It's like lagging indicator might be like the return on ad spend you have on it, right? But the leading indicator was like, how many new creatives are we testing per week? And there's a direct correlation between the amount of testing that you're doing and budget, obviously, and what that ROAS is. If you only are testing a small amount of new creatives, right, and you're letting stuff fatigue and sort of just have issue, and your ROAS doesn't really get better or performance increases, then you need to be measuring against the right things. And that in this instance, especially Meta, it's like, well, we need creative, like creatives, test it, scale what's working, right? So like that distinction between leading and lagging indicators or metrics really becomes important. And then just deciding which ones actually matter, right, is the other big thing, because you can just get stuck in like a million different ways and different acronyms of things to look at, but there's really only a handful that actually matter.
But Kyle, the thing that you say is very interesting, because it is true what you said about creatives, but I've worked with a lot of brands and I see the following happening probably 9 times out of 10. They have very good intentions of testing creatives. They do create their creatives, but then they do not optimize the creatives, meaning
For
that
sure.
inefficiency come into place. One ad is performing well, the other one is not. That happens to agencies and that happens to clients
Yeah, for
because
sure.
something else will take the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So going back to our digital platforms, the digital platform should then, quote unquote, notify you and be like,
Mm-hmm.
Kyle, this ad is not working. You need to pause it.
Right. Right.
So that's again, combining the strategy that you had, that you wanted to test the ads,
Mm-hmm.
but then the execution, which means opening every ad set or ad groups and clicking pause, checking the metrics. These are all things that there is better ways to use your time, essentially.
For sure. Well, it's the feedback loop within that system, right? That's like,
Yeah.
so obviously you have to create the creatives, but if you're not optimizing it and you're taking too long, like to your point, if you're clicking into every single ad and looking at it individually, manually on a platform, it's going to take a lot of time. But if you have a platform like yours that just pops up and says, hey, this ad's not performing, do you want me to pause it because it's not meeting expectations? Or better yet, it's set up with automation that just says, hey, if it's failing to hit the criteria, then automatically just pause it. And then that's popped up with you in your dashboard or in a report that says, hey, I paused 8 ads because of underperformance. And you're like, okay, well, we know we need to replace at least 8, in what we're doing. So it's like you're just sort of shortening the feedback loop, which allows you to be more efficient and ultimately test more, because at the end of the day, sometimes it is a execution in creative and you're just trying to find the winners. And I think all campaigns, and especially with creatives, it sort of follows sort of this S curve, right? So a lot of times, either in some platforms you get a little pop, and then you kind of get this dip in performance, and then you get it stable. But then ideal if you find winners, there's this scaling phase, right? But it's always sort of this S curve down on the low performance. Then it starts to scale, but then you kind of get to the end where it starts to get to the top of its performance. It's reached its end of life, right? And the performance starts to dip again. And so you kind of look at it, it looks like an S curve if you map it out. Well, I think the goal of scaling campaigns is essentially trying to stack those S curves on top of each other. So you're always bringing more winning creatives into your campaigns and then building on them. And hopefully the goal is you test enough so you can build multiple winning creatives into different campaigns to allow you to get to the scale you're trying to hit to. But a lot of times what happens is they try to run it for as long as it'll run, and then it fails, and they wait for it to just completely be dead and then start again from scratch instead of building momentum on top of it. And so having tools and digital platforms that allow you to see and visualize that data really, really clearly takes the guesswork out of it, right? Like you shouldn't have guesswork around it. It should be clearly notifying you how these things are performing. And when you get a yellow light, that means, hey, we got to keep an eye on this one because it's going to fail.
Very good point. Very fair point, Kyle. It made me think about something funny. I had a call with Google today. A client asked me to be on that call, and the thing that Google was saying is like, you guys have so many campaign duplicates. You shouldn't duplicate a campaign. It's not working. And well, I was like, okay, so let's put your theory to work. I asked Google to open the account and screen share, and that brought them to once upon a time when there was one campaign. CPA was through the roof. So it was like, yeah, might have been a coincidence. Right now, you're optimizing same ads over 10 campaigns. I was like, yes, but the CPA is a third. It's worth it. Yeah, but it takes too much time. You do not worry about that. We have something taking care of that, right?
Right.
And Google at the end had to give up. They were like, keep using the 10 campaigns. It's performing better. That to say that the point on the creativity is correct. But it goes back to the way we started this episode, which was the strategy part is what people pay Kyle for. That's what pay Rocco for. That's what they pay James for. Then everything else, and there is a big misconception, right? How many times clients say, oh, I don't see many changes in the change history, it means you're not working. There is still that conception of the account manager needs to make a lot of changes. And sometimes the biggest change is not doing anything in that account, because it's going to better. Sure. So I think as we move toward more of an automated era, it's actually going to reevaluate the job of a marketer, but it's going to create a problem where it's going to wash out a lot of the marketers that do not do that piece.
Yep. 100% agree. 100% agree. It's funny too, because I've had that conversation with clients and I was like, well, do you want performance or do you want activity? Because sometimes they're not one and the same.
Yeah.
And it's true. It's like, I can be in there tweaking and messing around with stuff all day long, but you're probably going to have a worse outcome than letting it just optimize and kind of do what it needs to do over this period of time. And so it's like, oftentimes less is more.
Yeah, it's fine.
I love it. And one of the things too that I think that is becoming more of a realization, but it oftentimes is a challenge with clients, is when you talk about like ROAS, right? Clients, I have some clients that are happy to look at like the 30-day, 45-day, they have longer, at least they're kind of looking at it in the way that Google looks at it, right? Or even Meta. Other clients are looking and they're like, what's my 7-day performance? And I was like, I'm happy to look at 7 days with you, but just be aware that your attribution window is set for 28 days in this particular account. So it's not going to have all of that complete picture yet. And so you're kind of looking through it with a little bit of not a full picture. But one of the things that I think is really interesting is, and one of the things we can talk about is sort of shifting from short-term return on ad spend to lifetime return on ad spend. And I think that's a really interesting way to look at it. A lot of times people talk about like LTV or different versions of LTV, right? But lifetime ROAS is kind of an interesting angle to look at it. Let's talk about that a little bit more. When you say lifetime ROAS, what does that actually mean at sort of the operator level of kind of like at the decision-making level?
Lifetime ROAS is essentially a very big concept in advertising. It's like one of those myths that everybody talks about, but nobody uses because it's very hard to do.
Right.
Hence, you do need an automation in place. But essentially what that means is, let's say you have campaign A and campaign B. You are looking at performance end of month in your Amazon account, and campaign A is a 300% ROAS, campaign B 400%. You write your report to the customer. I suggested putting more money in campaign B. It's getting 100% more ROAS. However, I buy my protein powder on Amazon. I keep buying the same protein powder every 20 days.
Yep.
Now, I might be the guy from campaign B. That means that by the end of the year, I would have bought 14 products from them.
Right.
So what's going to happen is, depending on the campaign, the product, the bidding, the strategy, you might attract longer term customers on campaign B. And those customers, by the end of the year, is that 300% has become a 1,500%. The 400 might have become an 800. So marketers that send that email for the 400% ROAS, they were not wrong. The client was happy. They were getting 100% more ROAS. But the strategic marketer is going to want to have that data to be able to say, today you're losing 100%. Within 12 months, I'm gaining you about 600, 700% more ROAS on that product. And that's the data that confirms it based on your historical purchases. Now, why is this so important? If you were to do this calculation manually, and that's why many people want to use it, but they don't, you actually need to get a third-party attribution company, which provides you the data, but they don't action on the data. You're supposed to cross-match manually with the campaigns and manually make those adjustments. The problem is that lifetime ROAS parameters are dynamic. They change.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's going to be just an insane amount of work. And once the client knows you're doing that, they will want to do it every day, right? Because they don't want to lose some money. So lifetime ROAS really allows you to grow a business because you are going to be focusing on what is valuable for you. You're going to see a situation where your CPA is much higher, your initial ROAS is much lower, but then the customer is retained. The best way to look at it is probably thinking about a subscription-based model where whenever you do a lead gen for a subscription-based model, you are never going to be focusing on the first sale. You're looking at your churn and you're looking at your lifetime value. Same thing for e-commerce, straight on point.
I agree. Yeah, no, 100%. In fact, one of the things with Ecomm that I've noticed is oftentimes we get overly obsessed with the first time customer purchase, right? Like that's the only thing that your marketing is optimized for. That's the only thing that kind of gets tracked. How many new customers, how many first time purchases are we bringing in? And I get it. At the beginning, that's sort of very true. You need to get product market fit. You need to really lock in on your ideal customer and understand those metrics. But I think the other thing that becomes really important is what is that lifetime value? And that becomes that next purchase, like the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth. That becomes even more crucial for you as a business in the long term, because that's where your profit is going to be made, right? Profitability is going to be really poor on the first customer acquisition, on first purchase, right? But it's going to be amazing in second and third. And that's where like lifetime ROAS really starts to shine, is just incorporating all of those additional purchases in there. What was like the aha moment for you? Maybe it was with a client or your own work where you like sort of the light bulb switch and really caused you to kind of think more about lifetime ROAS versus sort of the standard, attribution window ROAS that usually you see in like a platform like Meta or Google Ads?
Well, it was, I would say, to be honest with you, it was when I was talking to this one client that sells a product actually on Amazon. They're very big on Amazon. And his biggest complaint was that he keeps spending money, but at the end of the year, his company is not growing. So for me, I'm thinking, first of all, this could be one of those two issues. Issue number one, your product is not good. Issue number two, you're looking at your data completely the wrong way. And luckily it wasn't issue number one.
That's good.
In fact, as I was thinking about that, because believe it or not, before telling clients what to do, I like to swim or look around the house. And while I walk around the house, I think. So I go in the kitchen, I open my drawers to grab some coffee, and I see right in front of me this client's product. I was like, if my wife is spending money on this thing, the product must be good. So the
must be a good product.
Yeah, because she does. Right. She's like merciless when it comes to products. So I was like, okay, let me think about the other issue. So I asked him, are you using any third-party attribution tool? Yeah, but here is the data. And the data was scary. So much going on in there. So I was like, let me do something. I created an account on Shirofune, throw the data in there, waited 24 hours. And all of a sudden, here is what the picture was. First-party attribution, Meta is performing amazing. Very high ROAS. Google doesn't look very good. Pinterest doesn't look very good. Twitter looks horrendous. Reddit, so-and-so. Then I look at Triple Whale's data, and all of a sudden, Meta is their worst performing channel. I was like, okay, now we're starting to get somewhere. Then I look at lifetime value data, and it literally said, you should spend like crazy on Pinterest and Google because these people keep buying from you. So at that point, I was like, it's incredible how he had this data, wasn't understanding this data. And the moment this data talked to me, bear in mind, I didn't look at a single row of that data. I just plugged it in, right? I'm like, you need to put your money in Pinterest and Google. You need to decrease your money on Meta, keep Amazon as is. For the first time in 5 years, it grew sales because now he was using the right things. And he decided to focus on lifetime ROAS and for some campaigns, first-time customers. But that was the moment when I was like, this guy will continue to do the same thing for the next 5 years. not growing the company and spending more.
Because that's what people are telling him to do, right? It's like, oh, just do these things and eventually you'll get there.
Yeah, and it would have just spent more because of inflation goes up, and it would have spent more and more.
Well, you were talking with your Google person, and if you talk to Google, like, of course they're going to want you to continue to spend more with Google every single chance you get, right? Like build those campaigns. That time it did work out. It did. No, that's cool. It's also interesting that you had different third-party attribution platforms that were giving you kind of different data, right? Like one was saying, oh, Meta is awesome, or Meta is not that great. Another one's like, oh, but then you're like, oh, actually Pinterest and Google are giving you best lifetime ROAS, like optimized for that, as opposed to what some of these other platforms were saying. So I think that's an interesting takeaway, is that not all data interpretation is created equal.
Yeah, and if there is one thing that Kyle wants people to take away from today, is that strategy is key for a marketer.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter how much you know of Google. It doesn't matter how much you know of Meta. You can always find people to implement campaigns. Yeah. But if you get the strategy right and your strategic thinking right, that's the future of marketing.
Mm-hmm. What is the most common failure point based on all that story? Is the most common failure point in your mind when brands try to adopt this lifetime think is just not getting the data interpreted correctly? They're not just using maybe the right platform?
No, I think the biggest point is fear of change in people, because they are afraid to try something new. And then usually whenever they start seeing the results, they jump on board with this thinking, right? But their fear of being the first mover is a big problem. Sure. I remember when Google launched, I'm pretty old if I remember that, when Google launched conversion optimization,
right?
People were like, I like manual bidding because I can decide how much I pay per keyword. Now, if you're using manual bidding, you're clearly not a marketer because it doesn't work, right?
Well, you're going to get crushed. Like automated, like the conversion optimization, the AI, is going to win every time against you.
So yeah, that's I think that's the biggest problem there, and sometimes people, I think, they're scared of all of this automation because they're fearing for their jobs. While it's the contrary, we see higher retention of employees when the employees embrace technology because essentially they perform better.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's 100% true. And I think too, it's like if you're of one platform, then it makes it a little bit easier to sort of optimize around it, but you're trying to scale. And usually when you start to get to scale, right, you start to think more omni-channel. So I think then that lifetime value, the lifetime ROAS number that you're trying to optimize for, it becomes harder to do, right, when you have multiple inputs around different channels. And so let's talk about omni-channel strategies. And like, okay, now you're going for lifetime value or your lifetime ROAS number, right? And you are open to switching this out and adjusting your thinking. What are some omni-channel strategies that you would then, based on the data you've looked at, sort of like, this is where you want to lean into it?
There are, I think, 3 things that are fundamental here. Number 1, attribution. You've got to have one true source of attribution. Number 2, it is extremely important to be familiar with the different attribution models. We're going to get there in a second. And number 3, you need to be having a very clear understanding of budget management. I'm going to start with the easy one, budget management. Let's assume you're running a remarketing campaign. Everybody knows what a remarketing campaign is. A remarketing campaign essentially is one goal and one goal only in e-commerce: getting you that sale. And remarketing campaigns are on Google, they're on Meta, they're on Apple. You can think of a platform that have remarketing campaigns, essentially, right? And what do we do today? We set up the campaign, we put the budget, we put the bidding. But that's not efficient, because what today is working on Google might be working tomorrow on Meta, might be working differently on Pinterest. So really, your budget needs to be cross-channel. And you should have a way dynamically to be like, I want to spend $20,000 per month for remarketing. I do not care where, focus on performance, where I get the best performance. And that needs to happen for every layer of your campaigns, because it's very, it sounds weird to say, but it's very 2000 to create campaigns per budget per campaign. It's very 2025 to have cross-channel budgets. That's the number one thing.
For sure.
But then you get into the attribution modeling that you're using. Let me give you an example. We have a prospecting campaign, let's assume, on Meta. That prospecting campaign should really optimize for first click. Why? Because it most likely will never convert or will convert at the high CPA. But that click might result in a remarketing conversion. So while you want to optimize your remarketing conversion for maybe linear paid or last click, you want to optimize your Facebook for first click, because you want to know what clicks is driving the first interaction with the customer. Then you get mid-funnel, and when you go mid-funnel, you might need to use a different model. So we need to get out of the idea that we are going to use one model for all of our channels and all of our campaigns. The model is going to be based on the campaign type to be able to maximize your results. And the first point I made was to be very familiar with attribution that you choose, because lifetime value could be very good. But again, there might be a case where you want to optimize first click. So mix the attribution models to be able to get to a point where you have the best way to lead a customer from acquisition and giving it that importance that it needs, all the way to the final sale on the site.
Love it. I think that's really a great way to think about attribution, because oftentimes I feel like you sort of just pigeonhole your attribution is like it's a one size fits all. And I think that is definitely not the case, right? And so having that nuance to be able to look at your data through the right lens, you kind of, I explain attribution like this, to clients. It's like, when you go to like the optometrist and you have to sit there and they flip the little like lenses to like give you clarity on what you're looking at. Like, hey, look at that A. Is it better with this one, or is it better with this one? Attribution models are kind of like that, right? And what you're trying to do is find what's the clearest insight into the data that you're trying to get information towards, right? And if you have the wrong attribution model, or you have the wrong attribution time frame, right? Your data, your vision, your clarity is going to be blurry, right? You're going to be looking at it through the wrong lens, and it's just going to be blurry. It's not going to be super clear. But the second you flip that switch and you get the right one, and it clarifies that data, and it's bold and it's bright and it's crystal clear, you're like, that is, I do know exactly what action I should take, right? So I think that's important. How does, circling back real quick, the digital platform side, how is that is that baked into sort of your platforms that you use, even with potentially with Shirofune around attributions models per campaign type? Is that sort of baked into the platform, or do you have to kind of decide that ahead of time?
So usually what we say, we import all the data that there is, and we break it down by different types. Now, we cannot tell you what to optimize your campaigns for, right? Because Shirofune automates. Shirofune doesn't think for you, right?
Right, sure.
That's where the strategy comes into place. Now, of course, when we talk to our clients all the time, we give them our advice of how we will structure it and why. But that's more of something we do, quote unquote, on the side to give strategic advice, because we all know marketing. But at the end of the day, that's why AI will never replace a person. Because when it comes to the strategy, humans need to do the strategy. When it comes to executing the strategies, that's unfortunately when humans become less efficient, because last time I checked, we sleep. And when we sleep, we keep spending money, right? So how can we be perfect at executing if we do it a few hours a day? So of course, execution, a machine is going to do better, but the strategy is the core of it. It's like, I'm not a big football fan, because being Italian, like soccer, right? But soccer and football, You can have the best players, but if the coach doesn't do their job, those players are not going to perform. And same thing with the campaigns. You can have the best technology to perform, but there is a coach, and that coach cannot be a machine. Otherwise, in football, they would have put a machine riding the players around, right?
For sure.
And that's where I think why marketers shouldn't worry about their job, but they should embrace technology, because they're always going to lose at the parity of conditions against a marketer that uses technology to make their optimization more efficient.
Yeah, I love that. No, that's awesome. One other thing that you had mentioned before was the idea of an ad dependency trap. So how do you define the ad dependency trap, and what's sort of the early warning signs that your brand might be falling into it?
Oh, that's a very good question. The ad dependency trap can be a misleading concept. What do I mean by that?
Sure.
Spending money to acquire customers is totally fine. If you do not have, maybe, organic is difficult to do, social media to get viral, etc.
Yep.
It becomes a trap when the advertisement does not add on top of what you have. Give you an example. Let's say I buy a new phone, and for this phone, I buy a subscription or an app store. I try the app, and the app is horrendous. So the only thing the app can do to make up for that is to acquire more customers. So your churn is so high that you are ad dependent. However, if you have an app that you depend on advertising to acquire customers, but the churn is much lower than your acquisition rate, now all of a sudden you still depend on the ads to get the customers, but the livelihood of your company is not depending on the ads, because it's a good product. People can recommend it and people can keep subscribing, right? So the ad dependency, I would call it maybe bad service or bad product, depending if you have a service or a product business, because then it creates the loop that I'm sure you had clients that were like that, where all they cared about is acquire new customers, because probably they keep losing customers on the other side. There is no lifetime ROAS that can save you from a bad product, right? If your product is not good. So that's what I would like to clarify, because let's be honest, how can you not have advertisement to run a business?
Sure.
But Kyle, you probably saw a lot of products on Amazon that really were bad once you got the moment. Like, what am I supposed to do with this?
For sure. Yeah, 100%. Well, and then just only relying, and I think that's one piece of it. I think the other piece is just relying on ads as your only acquisition channel, right? I think that you eventually need to be, it's the easiest to turn on because it's incredibly scalable, right? You can scale it up. You can get a lot of traction. You can really use it to get product market fit, to test new things. But I think in my opinion, you need to be aiming to have at least one, what we call owned, media channel, whether that's organic, whether it's SEO. SEO is definitely harder to do now, but I think with AI, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But maybe it's social, maybe it's, content, video, email, which is probably the cleanest and clearest one that you can really build. But like, that should be your goal as a brand. It's like, I want to have one channel that I own, that I'm not, outsourcing to anybody else. And just to be clear, Amazon is not an owned channel for your sales, right? Like, you are renting Amazon's customers every single transaction you make. But a big customer email list that are buyers of your brand and product, 100% is. And so my goal for clients when I'm working with them is that to get at least at a minimum 40% of their revenue coming from email marketing. And so that's sort of like,
let me ask you a question though there, because going back to lifetime ROAS and first click attribution, when we run analysis on customers, 90% of the email sales, turns out their first click of the customer was a paid ad.
Oh, so, for sure.
So technically, what we are talking about here is customers need to do the post sales well. They essentially, right? Because once you acquire the customer, you don't want to churn it out.
Yeah, for sure.
Because that's one of the. I'm actually glad you mentioned email. because many times when people see email, they take the email dollar amount and they're like, oh, I can reduce my advertising spending. And I'm like, no, where did the first click come from? And talking
Exactly.
about the lenses you were talking about, the optometrist, that's exactly the
100%.
perfect example.
I agree. And that's where a lot of times I think we miss multi-touch attribution, right? Like that's sort of one of the things that get thrown around. But and you can kind of see it in like in your platform, and like you look at Google Analytics, whatever. What was sort of the path that people took towards a sale, even if they're a returning customer? Just because they're a returning customer doesn't mean that they just open your emails and they go buy, right? It still takes brand interactions, even if they're a returning customer, because sometimes it's hard for brands to imagine this, but you have competitors out there that are competing for your customers that are trying to steal them, right? And so really it's a function of how much brand strength do you have, and what is that switching cost? That's one of the beautiful things about, like, say, Apple, right? Is they have a high quality product, but they also get you into their ecosystem, which makes the switching costs associated with going to an entirely different platform less appealing, right? Because now they have you on your iTunes, they have you on iCloud, all your data's in one location, right? They have their iPad, your phone, your computer, your Apple Watch, all of it's all integrated. To blow all that up and to go to an entirely different system is very disruptive. So they make the switching cost, even if it's the mental load switching cost, higher in your mind to do. That allows that brand stickiness to really kind of be an important way to keep you as an Apple customer. And so I think for e-com brands, like, you have to be thinking about how many touches am I doing? Not only pre before their customer, like top of funnel awareness, that's part of it, but after the fact, to the point where, going back to where I would say, like, e-com brands specifically really over index on first purchase sales. Your advertising can be targeted for cross-sell, upsell, retargeting that you'd mentioned before, right? And that becomes even a better ROI driver, because you know what is it's a lot better conversion rate and probably ROAS for getting in front of a already existing customer of yours with a different product, or now it's time to get on the subscription, or however your business model is structured. You're going to get a much higher conversion rate with somebody who's already your customer, because they already know, like, and trust you, and they bought from you, right? So why not continue to build on that momentum and get visibility with them across every opportunity you have?
I knew you were smart, Kyle. You're just confirming it.
Well, I mean, it's just the reality of it, man. It's like, to your point, you got to look at the data. Like the data doesn't lie, and you can actually literally look at the data lines and be like, oh, well, if I stop doing X, I'm going to be losing. It's funny. I had this conversation actually with a client today. We were talking about Google ads, right? And they were like, their performance over the end of Q4 was on par with what it was last year. There wasn't a significant amount of growth. And they're like, oh, my Google ads just didn't perform. And I was like, well, is that true? And I was like, well, let's look at the data. So we actually went in and we started looking at the data. And what had happened was, actually, their Google ads, which that's what we are responsible for, were great and outperformed last year by a pretty decent margin. It was more efficient. Our ROAS was higher. Our actual revenue generated through those ads was significantly higher. And we had minimal increase in cost. Like, so efficiency wise, it was crushed. But then we dove in a little bit more and like, oh, actually what really was the challenge was your email marketing fell off a cliff, and you didn't send as many emails, and you didn't send and transact. And so you were actually, and there's more nuanced layers into, I think, what was the driver behind that. But essentially it's like, I'm going to blame Google ads. Well, actually it was these two other things that didn't perform at the same level. And you kind of broke even because you had really great performance on one channel and suboptimal performance on these other channels, which allowed you not to basically sort of not have good growth that you're expecting in Q4.
Yeah, it's very interesting, like with the proper reporting, they would have been able to maybe intervene earlier. It's like, oh, I need to do more on the email, right?
Yeah, exactly. 100%. So like trying to help them get internal processes of like looking at that and pointing that out and kind of doing that. It's kind of what we're doing now. So, but yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you're kind of just like, hey, well, where, this is where our lane is. But to your point, we want to try and add as much value as we can. And so looking outside of our lane, right? And like, actually, this is what's happening, like raise your hand and be like, hey, we should really pay attention to this, is where the value is added for sure. Awesome. Well, okay. So I want to ask you some rapid fire questions.
Sounds good.
All right. Rapid fire questions. You can just off the top of your head. Here we go. What is one metric that most e-com brands, founders, marketers obsess over that you think is overrated?
Bounce rate.
Oh, that's a good one. Good one. All right. What's one signal that reliably predicts strong lifetime ROAS early? Like what's one signal that gives you good signal early to lifetime ROAS?
Predictive lifetime ROAS, where you look at your past data.
All right. Love that. That's good. What's the most dangerous idea, sentence, thinking a brand can say about paid ads? Like what's the most dangerous assumption that a brand might make about paid ads?
It's expensive.
Ooh, I like that. That is a good answer. It is all relative. What is one channel or lever that is most underutilized by e-commerce brands today?
Organic social.
That is also a good one. If you had to cut one growth activity tomorrow, what would it be?
Overthinking.
Oh, nice one. You just execute and let the data tell you what direction you should do. I love it. These are good.
Think the right amount.
Think the right. It's like overthinking is dangerous, right? Because a lot of times you kind of get with this, they used to call it like the paralysis of analysis, right? It's like, oh, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? I think it's like you make the best, most educated guess you can make on the data that you have, and then trust it and then measure it and see what happens with it, right? Did it beat because everything's essentially an A/B test, right? It's like I did A and I'm going to do B, and does B beat A? Am I having a marked increase in performance? But the question, and I think which is really important that you've kind of brought into this conversation, is like you have all these inputs from omnichannel and different things you're going to look at. You have to be able to pull it together in a cohesive way and actually get actionable insight out of it, right? And I think that goes back to the need to have a platform that allows you to pull this data back in, right? Like what you're doing with Shirofune, right? You have the ability to bring all this stuff in and elevate that to a place where actionable insight and decision making can be made, right? Because without that, you just do a lot of guessing, and then you're taking a lot of action, but you're not really getting anything. And sometimes you're making the wrong choices, and you see performance go down, or you see your revenues going down, or profitability, more importantly, is going down, and because you're making rapid decisions on bad assumptions or bad data points, and you're not really able to bring that in a cohesive way. I think that's an important thing.
Yeah, it's like you need to give yourself the proper tools to do an amazing job these days. It's not like 20 years ago where things were different. You had a lot of room for error and you wouldn't notice. It's not like
for sure.
Anymore.
And I think it's also interesting too, as attribution becomes even more challenging, not because you have so many different sources of attribution or different channels that come through, but just, privacy and security things, and, losing the ability to even track to some extent. And it almost reminds me of going back old school, right? Back in the day, in early advertising is all about impressions, right? Like how many impressions are you tracking towards, right? And to some extent, there's almost a throwback to that. It's like, well, how many impressions are you getting as a whole with what you're doing? It's like eyeballs, visibility. And it's interesting how that becomes an interesting trigger and signal now with some of the stuff, as direct session attribution of a customer becomes harder to pull off.
First party data is going to become very important, right?
100%. 100%. Yeah, I love it.
For the next episodes.
Yeah, the next one. Let's do it. I'd be happy. We can go into all of the first party data and attribution components that go into that. I'd love it. But Rocco, I mean, this is great, man. How do people get in touch with you?
They can just go on our website or on the Shirofune website. And on the Shirofune website, they can just always schedule a call with us. We are going to be very happy to essentially go ahead and schedule a demo with you guys, show you how the platform works. Essentially, like, even if you have questions about what's possible out there, we can help. And our website is www.shirofune.io. But you can also, if you don't remember the IO part, the .us, we redirect the .io. And what I can always tell you guys is that one of the things that can hurt the business the most is not using Shirofune. That might hurt you, but that's a biased opinion. It's not learning what's out there, right?
Yeah, for sure.
You have no idea how many demos I've done in my life for products that maybe you didn't want to use at that time, but I learned, and I learned what's possible. So I think that's the message I want to send out there. Don't be scared of change. Don't be scared of learning, and it will be fine.
I love it. Well, let me tell you this, based on our conversation and your level of knowledge, I'm definitely booking a demo with you guys, because I kind of want to see how we can start using this and implement it as well. So 100%, you will get a demo request from me here in the near future.
You're gonna love it, and then we can do an episode showing the results you got, so people are not going
exactly real the real breakdown, case study breakdown, real life application.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Yeah, it was a pleasure. We'll have to have you back on again in the near future, Rocco. Thanks for being on the show and just dropping some awesome knowledge on everybody.
Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everyone.